Welcome back to Deep Blue Tales, where we explore the most incredible true stories from the depths of our oceans. Today's story will remind you that beneath the waves, intelligence and gratitude know no bounds. Before we dive in, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community of ocean lovers from around the world. Also, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our tales travel. And if this story moves you, give it a like and share it with someone who needs to witness the ocean's magic. Off the coast of Baja California, Mexico, a struggling fisherman was about to witness something that would challenge everything marine biologists thought they knew about whale memory and gratitude. His name was Tomás Reyes, and at 52 years old, he had spent nearly 4 decades working the waters of the Sea of Cortez. The deep lines etched into his weathered brown face told the story of countless sunrises on the Pacific, of storms weathered and seasons survived. His hands were rough and calloused, scarred from years of handling nets and lines, pulling in catches that grew smaller with each passing year. Tomás lived in a small fishing village called San Juanico, population barely 300 souls, where tin-roofed houses clung to the rocky coastline like barnacles. His home was modest, 3 rooms with walls that needed paint and a roof that leaked when the rains came. His wife, Elena, worked at the village store to help make ends meet. Their 2 sons had moved to Tijuana years ago, searching for opportunities the ocean could no longer provide. The fishing had been brutal that season. Climate change had shifted the currents, and the sardines his livelihood depended on had moved to deeper, colder waters. His boat, the Esperanza, Hope, was 25 years old, held together with fiberglass patches and prayers. The engine burned oil. The radio worked only half the time. He was 3 months behind on the loan he'd taken to repair his nets. But Tomás was not a man who complained. He rose each morning at 4, made his coffee in the dark, kissed his sleeping wife and headed to the sea. Because what else was there to do? The ocean was all he knew. The ocean was all he had. It was early June 2018. The day began like any other, cool and grey with a thick marine layer obscuring the stars. Tomás guided the Esperanza out of the small harbour, the diesel engine coughing and sputtering in the pre-dawn darkness. The sea was calm, almost eerily so, its surface like dark glass reflecting the pale glow of his boat's running lights. He headed west, toward his usual fishing grounds about 8 kilometers offshore, where the continental shelf dropped away into deeper waters. The air smelled of salt and kelp, that particular ocean scent that had been the backdrop of his entire life. Seabirds called in the darkness, waiting for dawn and the feeding frenzy that came with it. By 6:30, the sun had begun to rise, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Tomás had his nets deployed, drifting in the current, hoping for a decent catch of sardines or maybe some mackerel. He poured himself another cup of coffee from his thermos and settled in to wait, as he had done thousands of times before. That's when he heard it. A sound unlike anything he'd heard in 40 years on these waters. Not the explosive blow of a whale's breath. He knew that sound well. This was different, lower, more desperate. A kind of groaning, thrashing sound that carried across the still morning air. Tomás stood, scanning the horizon. The sun was fully up now, and about 200 meters off his starboard side, he saw the disturbance. Something large was moving erratically in the water, creating white foam and spray. He moved to the wheel, starting the engine, and motored slowly toward the commotion. As he drew closer, his heart sank. It was a humpback whale, a juvenile, maybe 8 or 9 meters long, probably 2 or 3 years old, and it was tangled, badly tangled. Ghost fishing nets, those abandoned or lost gill nets that haunt the ocean like deadly cobwebs, had wrapped around the young whale's body. The heavy monofilament was cutting into its pectoral fins, wrapped around its tail fluke, even crossing over part of its mouth. The whale was exhausted, barely able to keep its blowhole above water. Every movement seemed to tighten the net's grip. Tomás had seen this before. Every fisherman had. Ghost nets killed thousands of whales, dolphins, sea turtles, and sharks every year. Most fishermen would call the authorities and move on. What else could you do? Getting close to a panicked whale was dangerous. The nets weren't their responsibility, and the authorities, if they came at all, might take hours. But as Tomás watched the young whale struggle, as he saw the sheer terror in its movements and the blood seeping from where the nets cut into flesh. He thought of his own sons. He thought of what he would want someone to do if they were trapped and desperate. He made a decision that would cost him his entire day's catch and possibly damage his boat. He made a decision that required him to get dangerously close to a thrashing, 15-ton animal. He made a decision based purely on what felt right, not what made sense. Tomás pulled up his own nets, leaving behind what might have been his best catch in weeks, and secured them. He grabbed his knife, the one with the slightly rusty blade that he'd owned since he was 20. He also took his gaff hook and a pair of heavy gloves. Then he did something incredibly dangerous. He positioned the Esperanza alongside the struggling whale, close enough to reach out and touch it. The whale panicked at first, thrashing harder, and Tomás nearly fell overboard when a wave from the animal's tail rocked his small boat. "Tranquilo, tranquilo," he whispered, his voice calm despite his racing heart. "Easy, friend. I'm here to help." He didn't know if the whale could understand tone or intention, but he kept talking anyway, the way he would to a frightened dog. Carefully, Tomás leaned over the side of his boat and reached for the nets. The work was brutal and terrifying. Each time he cut a strand of the thick monofilament, the whale would jerk or dive slightly, nearly pulling him into the water. The sun climbed higher, beating down on his back. Sweat poured into his eyes. His hands cramped from gripping the knife. The whale's rough skin scraped his arms, leaving bloody scratches, but Tomás didn't stop. Strand by strand, section by section, he cut away the deadly netting. The net around the whale's mouth came free first, allowing it to open its huge jaws. Then he worked on the pectoral fins, sawing through the tough material until the flippers could move freely again. The tail was the hardest. The net was wound so tightly around the fluke that he had to dive partially into the water, holding his breath, working the knife between the net and the whale's flesh while trying not to cut the animal. The whale had gone still now, as if it understood he was trying to help, but Tomás knew this calm could end in an instant. 3 hours. 3 full hours he worked under the blazing sun. His water ran out, his hands bled, his back screamed in agony, but finally, mercifully, the last strand came free. The young humpback hung there for a moment, suspended in the blue water beside Tomás's boat. Then it dove, just disappeared beneath the surface without a sound, leaving only ripples behind. Tomás slumped onto the deck of the Esperanza, exhausted beyond words. His hands shook. His shirt was soaked with sweat and seawater. He looked at the pile of torn nets on his deck, at least 50 kilos of monofilament that would have eventually killed that whale. He looked at his watch. Nearly 11 in the morning, half a day gone. His nets had drifted away, probably lost. His fishing grounds would have moved on by now, following the current and the baitfish. Today would be a complete loss, financially speaking. Elena would understand, but it didn't make the loss any easier to bear. As he started the engine to head home, Tomás felt the weight of his choice. He felt the ache in his muscles and the knowledge that tonight's dinner would be beans and rice again, that he'd have to explain to Elena why he came home with nothing, that the loan payment would have to wait another week. But as he guided the Esperanza back towards San Juanico, he also felt something else, a quiet satisfaction, a sense that he had done what needed to be done. Whatever hardship this day cost him, he couldn't have lived with himself if he'd sailed away. The young whale was free. That was enough. The sun was setting by the time Tomás tied up at the small dock in San Juanico. He cleaned the blood and scales from his hands, coiled his remaining lines and headed home to tell Elena about his day. He expected sympathy, maybe a gentle scolding about practical matters. He didn't expect miracles. That night, lying in bed with the window open to catch the cool ocean breeze, Tomás thought about the young humpback. He wondered if it had found its pod, if it would survive the wounds the net had left, if it would remember this day at all. He had no way of knowing that the whale would remember. Oh, how it would remember. The next morning arrived with a brilliant blue sky, unusual for June when the marine layer typically lingered until noon. Tomás was up at his usual 4 o'clock, moving quietly through his morning routine, trying not to wake Elena. His body ached from yesterday's exertion, but the ocean waited for no one. He took the Esperanza out at 5:30, heading back to his fishing grounds with new nets and dwindling hope. He needed a good catch today, needed it desperately. The sea was calm again, almost supernaturally so. No wind, no chop, just an endless expanse of mirror-smooth water that reflected the pink dawn sky. It was the kind of calm that fishermen both loved and found unsettling. Tomás reached his usual spot around 7 o'clock and began deploying his nets. He worked methodically, his mind on practical things, the loan payment, the engine that needed work, his son's upcoming birthday. That's when he noticed the silence. It was too quiet. The seabirds that usually followed his boat hoping for scraps had vanished. The sea lions that sometimes played in his wake were absent. Even the pelicans, usually diving for breakfast by now, were nowhere to be seen. The hair on the back of Tomás's neck stood up. In 4 decades of fishing, he'd learned to trust these subtle warnings. When the sea went silent, something was about to happen. He stopped what he was doing and scanned the horizon. Nothing. Just endless blue water meeting endless blue sky. Then he heard it. A sound so deep it was more felt than heard, vibrating through the hull of his boat, resonating in his chest. A whale song, but different. Multiple whales singing together, the notes overlapping and harmonizing in a way that seemed almost impossible. Tomás turned in a slow circle, searching for the source. That's when he saw them. They appeared from the west first, rising from the deeper waters of the continental shelf. Massive humps of black and white, breaking the surface in perfect synchronization. 5 whales, then 10, then 20. Dios mío, Tomás whispered, his hands gripping the wheel of his boat. They kept coming, from the north, from the south, from the depths directly below him. Humpback whales of all sizes, massive adults 30 meters long, younger juveniles, mothers with calves swimming tight beside them. They surfaced in coordinated groups, their blowholes releasing synchronized bursts of mist that caught the morning light and created temporary rainbows. Tomás counted frantically, his heart hammering against his ribs. 30 whales, 50, 75, 100. They kept coming. The whales began to form a pattern around his small boat. Not randomly, not chaotically, but with obvious intent and precision. They swam in concentric circles, each ring moving at the same speed, maintaining perfect spacing between individuals. It was like watching a choreographed ballet performed by creatures weighing 40 tons each. Tomás stood frozen on the deck of the Esperanza, unable to move, barely able to breathe. The water around him was no longer blue. It was black with whale bodies, churning white with their movements. The sound was overwhelming. The deep, resonant breathing of 200 whales, the splash of flukes and flippers, the continuing song that seemed to come from everywhere at once. 150 whales, 175, 200. Exactly 200 humpback whales surrounded his boat in a formation so perfect it looked designed by mathematicians. The outer ring was the largest, maybe 100 meters in diameter, with whales spaced evenly every 5 meters. Then an inner ring, closer to his boat. Then another tighter still. 3 perfect concentric circles of whales, all moving slowly clockwise around the Esperanza. And in the center, right beside Tomás's boat, floated the young whale he had freed the day before. He recognized the scarring on its dorsal fin, the healing wounds where the net had cut deepest. The young whale rolled onto its side, one huge eye breaking the surface, looking directly at Tomás. And in that moment, Tomás knew, with absolute certainty that defied logic, that this whale had brought its entire pod, its family, its community. They had come to see the human who had given 3 hours of his life to cut their baby free. Tomás felt tears running down his weathered cheeks. His legs gave out, and he sat down hard on the deck, overwhelmed by what he was witnessing. The whales maintained their formation, circling slowly, their songs creating a symphony that seemed to come from the ocean itself. It lasted exactly 43 minutes. Tomás checked his watch later, unable to believe it had been both so short and felt so eternal. Then, as synchronized as they had arrived, the whales began to dive. The outer ring first, slipping beneath the surface in groups of 10, then the middle ring, then the inner ring. Each departure marked by the vertical rise of massive tail flukes, water streaming from the flukes in sheets before they disappeared into the blue depths. The young whale was last. It surfaced one final time directly beside Tomás's boat, so close he could have reached out and touched it. Its blowhole opened, releasing a breath that smelled of fish and kelp and the ancient ocean. Then it dove, its scarred fluke rising high above the water in what looked unmistakably like a wave goodbye. And then they were gone. All 200 of them vanished as if they had never been there at all. The sea was empty again, silent. The birds returned, crying out in confusion. A sea lion popped up 50 meters away, looking around as if asking what it had missed. Tomás sat on the deck of his boat for a long time, shaking, tears still streaming down his face. His mind couldn't process what had just happened. His heart understood perfectly. He eventually stood on trembling legs and looked down at his nets, which he had never actually deployed. They lay coiled on the deck, unused. He laughed then, a slightly hysterical sound that echoed across the empty water. What was the point of fishing today? How could he possibly think about sardines and mackerel after what he had just witnessed? But as he stood there, he noticed something in the water around his boat. The surface was churning with fish. Not just a few, thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Sardines and anchovies driven to the surface by something below, forming massive bait balls that roiled the water silver. The whales, Tomás realized. The 200 whales circling his boat had been doing more than just greeting him. They had been feeding, and in doing so, they had driven more fish to this spot than Tomás had seen in years. With shaking hands, he deployed his nets. Within 2 hours, he had pulled in the largest catch of his entire life. Net after net came up bulging with fish, so heavy he could barely haul them aboard. His small boat sat dangerously low in the water, deck covered with silver bodies, holds filled to capacity and beyond. He would have to make 2 trips to get it all back to shore. 2 trips. He couldn't remember the last time one catch required 2 trips. As Tomás started the engine and pointed the Esperanza toward home, he kept looking back at the empty sea, half expecting to see a fluke or a blow. But the whales were gone. They had delivered their message and moved on. But Tomás knew, with the same certainty he had felt when the young whale looked at him, that this wasn't over. Something had begun out here, something he couldn't name, but could feel in his bones. He didn't know yet that within a week, marine biologists from 3 countries would be calling him, that his story would spread through the scientific community like wildfire, that researchers who had spent careers studying cetacean behavior would tell him he had witnessed something unprecedented in recorded history. All he knew as he navigated back to San Juanico with his overflowing boat was that yesterday he had freed a trapped whale expecting nothing in return. And today 200 whales had shown him that the ocean remembers everything. The dock at San Juanico had never seen anything like it. When Tomás arrived with his first load of fish, word spread through the village like lightning. By the time he returned with the second load, half the village had gathered to watch. The other fishermen helped him unload, their faces a mixture of amazement and envy. Old Carlos Mendoza, who had fished these waters for 60 years, walked the length of Tomás's catch 3 times, shaking his head in disbelief. "In 60 years, Tomás," Carlos said, his voice hoarse with emotion. 60 years, and I have never seen a catch like this. What did you do, make a deal with the ocean itself? Tomás didn't answer immediately. How could he explain what had happened? Who would believe him? But Elena, standing at the edge of the dock with her hand shading her eyes from the sun, saw something in her husband's face. She saw wonder. She saw the remnants of tears. She saw a man transformed. That evening, after the fish had been sold for more money than Tomás usually made in 3 months, after he had paid off the loan and bought Elena the new shoes she needed, after they had eaten a proper meal with meat and vegetables, Tomás finally told his wife what had happened. He expected skepticism. He got tears. "They thanked you," Elena whispered, gripping his scarred hands across their small kitchen table. "The whales came to thank you." "I know how it sounds," Tomás said. "I know. But Elena, I counted them. 200 exactly. In perfect circles, they looked at me, they saw me, they knew." Elena smiled through her tears. "I believe you, mi amor. The ocean has always known you. Why wouldn't the whales?" But Tomás needed more than belief. He needed understanding. He needed to know if what he experienced was real or if the sun and exhaustion had created some kind of hallucination. 3 days later, he did something he had never done before. He borrowed his neighbor's truck and drove 4 hours north to La Paz, to the offices of the Marine Mammal Research Center at the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California Sur. He felt out of place immediately. A poor fisherman with an 8th grade education, walking into a building full of scientists with computers and degrees. He almost turned around twice, but the memory of 200 whales in perfect formation drove him forward. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, listened to his stammered explanation and made a phone call. 10 minutes later, Tomás was sitting in the office of Dr. Gabriela Mendez, one of Mexico's leading experts on humpback whale behavior. Dr. Mendez was in her early 40s, with gray-streaked black hair pulled into a practical ponytail and intelligent brown eyes that studied Tomás with genuine interest. Her office walls were covered with underwater photographs of whales, charts of migration patterns, and certificates from institutions around the world. "Tell me exactly what you saw," she said, pulling out a notebook. Every detail. Tomás told her everything. The trapped juvenile the day before, the 3 hours of cutting nets the next morning, the silence, the 200 whales, the perfect circles, the young whale's final goodbye. He expected her to dismiss him politely, to explain it as coincidence or misidentification. Instead, Dr. Mendez went very still. Her pen stopped moving. She stared at Tomás with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're certain it was 200? She asked quietly. "You counted?" "As they arrived, yes, I lost count near the end because I was overwhelmed. But I counted at least 175, maybe 200, maybe a few more." Dr. Mendez stood abruptly and walked to her filing cabinet. She pulled out a thick folder and spread several documents across her desk. "Mr. Reyes," she said, her voice tight with excitement, "what you've described, it's something we've theorized about for years, but never documented at this scale. You've witnessed what we call an acoustic gathering or gratitude display, but the numbers you're describing are unprecedented." She pulled out a research paper with highlighted sections and began reading excerpts aloud. In 2011, off the coast of California, a woman named Valentine cut a whale free from crab trap lines. The next day, the whale returned with its calf and circled her boat for 30 minutes. In 2015, near Tonga, a diver removed fishing line from a humpback's mouth. That whale followed his boat for 3 hours, breaching repeatedly alongside it. Dr. Mendez looked up at Tomás, her eyes bright. "But those incidents involved one whale, maybe two. You're describing 200 individuals in a coordinated display. If what you're telling me is accurate, this is the largest documented case of cetacean gratitude behavior in scientific history." Tomás felt vindicated and terrified at the same time. "So they did come to thank me? I'm not crazy?" "You're not crazy, Mr. Reyes. Humpback whales have the most complex social structures of any marine mammal. Their brains have specialized cells called spindle neurons, the same cells that in humans are associated with empathy, emotion, and social intelligence. They have more of these cells than we do, more than any other creature on Earth." She pulled out another document, this one showing colorful brain scans. "Recent research from the Institute of Marine Sciences in Auckland has proven that humpbacks possess long-term memory extending decades. They recognize individual humans after years of separation. They remember locations, songs, and even specific boats. We've documented whales returning to the exact same spot where they were rescued years later, as if checking to see if their rescuer is there." Dr. Mendez sat back down, leaning forward with intensity. "But here's what's truly remarkable. Humpback whales communicate across hundreds of kilometers using low-frequency songs. If the juvenile you freed wanted to call its pod its extended family, every humpback within a 200-kilometer radius would hear. They would know. They would come." "But why so many?" Tomás asked. "Why 200? "Think about it from their perspective," Dr. Mendez said. "You're a 3-year-old whale trapped and dying, then a member of a species that usually means danger, a species that hunted your kind to near extinction, instead risks his safety to free you. That information gets shared, communicated, and the pod responds, the entire pod, because if one human showed compassion, they want to see him. They want to remember him. They want to thank him. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Mr. Reyes, you have to understand how significant this is. We're talking about interspecies communication at a level we're only beginning to comprehend. Those whales didn't just swim near your boat randomly. You described perfect circles, mathematical precision. That requires coordination, planning, intent. That's culture, Mr. Reyes, that's society. That's proof that we're not alone in possessing emotional intelligence on this planet. Tomás sat quietly, absorbing this. Then he remembered something. The fish, he said. After they left, the water was full of fish. More than I'd seen in years. Did they do that on purpose? Dr. Mendez smiled. Humpbacks are bubble net feeders. They work in coordinated groups, swimming in circles below schools of fish while releasing air bubbles. The bubbles form a cylindrical net that traps the fish, driving them to the surface. 200 whales circling your boat. They weren't just visiting, Mr. Reyes, they were feeding, and they left you the abundance they created. A gift, Tomás whispered. A gift, Dr. Mendez confirmed. Reciprocal altruism. You helped them, they helped you. It's been documented in dolphins, orcas, and occasionally in humpbacks, but never at this scale, never this clearly. Over the next hour, Dr. Mendez asked Tomás dozens of questions, documenting every detail. She explained that she would submit his account to the International Whaling Commission's database of whale-human interactions. She asked if he would be willing to speak to other researchers. She asked if he had any photographs. Tomás's heart sank. No, I didn't think. I was too overwhelmed. I just watched. Dr. Mendez reached across her desk and squeezed his hand. That's okay, Mr. Reyes. Some moments are meant to be experienced, not documented. Your testimony is enough. I believe you, and the scientific community will too. As Tomás prepared to leave, Dr. Mendez stopped him at the door. Mr. Reyes, one more thing. Those whales know you now. They know your boat. Humpbacks follow the same migration routes year after year, and they're incredibly loyal to feeding grounds. The Sea of Cortez is their home, which means there's a very good chance you'll see them again. She was right. 6 weeks later, on a calm July morning, Tomás was checking his nets when he heard a familiar sound. A blow. Close. Very close. He turned to find the young whale floating beside his boat, its scarred fin instantly recognizable. The whale rolled onto its side, that huge eye finding Tomás's face, and released a long melodic vocalization that sounded almost like a greeting. Tomás laughed, tears streaming down his face. Hola, amigo. You came back. The whale stayed for 20 minutes, swimming slow circles around the Esperanza, occasionally spy-hopping, lifting its head vertically out of the water to look around, and always keeping Tomás in sight. Then it dove and was gone. But it returned, again and again throughout that summer and fall, sometimes alone, sometimes with other whales, once with what Dr. Mendez later confirmed was likely its mother, a massive female that approached Tomás's boat with caution before seeming to relax, as if the young whale had vouched for him. Word spread through San Juanico. Other fishermen reported seeing Tomás's boat surrounded by whales. Tourist boats from La Paz started asking if they could follow him, hoping to witness the phenomenon. Dr. Mendez visited 3 times, documenting the ongoing relationship. In November, a reporter from a nature magazine came to interview Tomás. The story was picked up by international media. Suddenly, Tomás Reyes, the poor fisherman who couldn't afford to fix his engine, was being invited to speak at marine conservation conferences. But Tomás remained unchanged. He still rose at 4 in the morning, still took the Esperanza out to the same fishing grounds, still worked with his scarred, calloused hands. The only difference was that now he never put nets in the water without first checking carefully for whales, and he kept a knife and heavy gloves ready, just in case he found another creature in need. His story inspired the fishing cooperative in San Juanico to establish the region's first ghost net removal program. Fishermen began reporting abandoned nets instead of ignoring them. Schools in La Paz started teaching Tomás's story as an example of coexistence with marine life. Dr. Mendez published a paper titled Large-Scale Coordinated Gratitude Display in Humpback Whales, Megaptera novaeangliae. a case study. It was cited in dozens of subsequent studies on cetacean intelligence and social behavior. But for Tomás, the greatest gift wasn't fame or recognition. It was the knowledge, gained on that perfect blue morning surrounded by 200 whales, that consciousness and gratitude exist beyond our species, that the ocean is full of minds as complex as our own, that the creatures we share this planet with are watching, remembering, and responding to how we treat them. On the one-year anniversary of freeing the young whale, Tomás returned to the exact spot where it had happened. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sea in shades of gold and pink. He sat on the deck of the Esperanza with a cup of coffee, not fishing, just being present. Right on time, as if it had marked the day in its own calendar, the young whale surfaced. It was larger now, healthier. The scars from the net faded, but still visible. It circled the boat once, twice, 3 times. Then it breached. A full, magnificent breach, its entire body rising from the water, spinning slightly, before crashing back down in an explosion of white spray. Joy. Pure, unmistakable joy. Tomás raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. "You're welcome, my friend. Anytime. Anytime." The whale dove, its fluke rising high and hanging in the air for a long moment, perfectly silhouetted against the rising sun. Then it was gone, disappeared into the blue depths that had become not just Tomás's workplace, but his church, his teacher, and his connection to something far greater than himself. What can we learn from Tomás's story? It teaches us something profound about the ocean's memory and the depth of intelligence that exists beneath the waves. Marine biologists now understand that whales, dolphins, and many other marine creatures possess emotional intelligence rivaling our own. They remember kindness, they communicate gratitude, they form bonds that transcend species boundaries. But here's what truly matters. If these creatures remember our compassion, they also remember our cruelty. Every piece of plastic we dispose of carelessly, every net we abandon, every ecosystem we destroy, the ocean remembers. Tomás's 3 hours of back-breaking effort earned him a lifetime of connection and a gift of abundance from 200 grateful whales. Imagine what humanity could earn if we all chose compassion over convenience. The next time you see the ocean, remember, you're not looking at a resource to be exploited. You're looking at a community of conscious beings who are watching us, remembering us, and waiting to see what we'll do next. Will we be the species that takes, or the species that protects? The whales are waiting for our answer. If this story inspired you, let us know in the comments what you will do differently to protect our oceans. Subscribe for more incredible tales from the deep, and share this with someone who needs to remember that the ocean is alive, aware, and worth saving. Till next time, keep exploring the blue,